'cause I haven't got time for the pain. I haven't got room for the pain. I haven't the need for the pain. Not since I've known you.
Car crashes are the #1 killer of young Americans. Most of the 47,000 people killed every year in car accidents are between the ages of 16 and 34. Half of these deaths are caused by drug and alcohol abuse. When we're young, we tend to think accidents only happen to others. It's not true. All too easily, we can be the cause and we can be the victims. The movie you're about to see has no actors. The victims and their families who appear want to spare you from the tragedy they've suffered and its aftermath. This is Carly Simon.
Sporting a T-shirt that said diving, 25-year-old Bruce David Kimball of Ann Arbor, Michigan, walked out of the Hillsborough County Jail on bond. He's charged with 2 counts of vehicular manslaughter. He allegedly rammed his Mazda sports car into a large crowd of young people gathered on Colfrith Road in Valrico.
He hits another body. Keeps going.
2 people in the crowd were killed on impact, 16-year-old Kevin Gossick and 19-year-old Bobby Bedell. 2 others received critical injuries, 16-year-old Raymond Kirker and April Bruffy. Kimball reportedly told police he had several drinks before the crash. Kimball wasn't hurt, but one of 2 passengers in his car received minor injuries. The 25-year-old Olympic diver and winner of a silver medal in 1984 was in Tampa to practice for Olympic competition in Seoul. Detectives have questioned Kimball about the accident, but they're not saying much about that conversation. They're now waiting for the results of a blood alcohol test. The test results and their report will be turned over to the state attorney, and more charges are likely to be filed. In Hillsborough County, I'm Bill Alexander, Action News.
The spot was a pretty normal place. It was away from Brandon, the main part of the town, and it was pretty secluded, pretty safe. So we found it one night. And it started out the kids would hang out there, either on the weekends and during the summer, every night. I'd gone out to the spot. I took 2 of my friends out of there, Jason Hamilton and Kevin Gossick. We'd gone out there and met a couple friends and had been sitting there for maybe an hour and doing pretty normal stuff, pretty much what every other teenager does, meeting girls and talking to friends.
I turned to give RJ a hug, just say, "How you doing?" Looked over his shoulder, saw headlights, and was hit.
You really couldn't see anything because it was dark, but when the cars would go by, you could see pretty much the whole scene. Really grim scene. A lot of carnage. There were body parts laying around all over the place. But Robbie Bedell was to my right and April's to my left. I couldn't really see April at all because my eye had been swollen shut. I hit my head on the ground, I guess, when I was hit by the car, but Robbie was pretty cut up. He was just, you could tell he was dead right away. And my friend Kevin had been hit at the same time, and he was up the street. The car must have dragged him up the street. We couldn't tell what happened. But I really didn't know then exactly what happened. We had just been standing around, and all of a sudden we were hit.
The first thing I saw, of course, was very dark, and there's no street lights down there because it's a dead end. And there were bodies in the road, and there were pieces of bodies in the road. There was blood going down the gutters, streaming down the gutters, and cars everywhere, and smashed.
So I looked to my side, and I saw RJ laying there, and I thought he was dead. I didn't know. And I thought, oh my God. And I saw his leg was off. Well, that just put me in a frenzy because I figured his leg's off, and I'm hurting this way. My leg's got to be off, and my life is over. My leg is off.
April was just screaming, and I couldn't get her to stop, but I knew she was alive, so I thought, well, I'll just go next. So I crawled until I hit another body, and it was the Kirker boy.
I just come on duty that night when I was dispatched to an accident down here at the dead end of Culbreth, which the teenagers commonly refer to as the Spot. They come down here and they gather and socialize and drink and get together. It's a very dark area. There's no street lights. When I arrived, I could see with my headlights a body in the roadway. I stopped my car, called for EMS, and I could see a teenage girl and a teenage boy laying on the side of the road, bleeding very badly from their legs. Both of them had their legs partially severed.
Well, we were in a state of panic because we didn't know what was happening or where RJ was. One child had been brought in, and only one. And at the time, I didn't know it, but that was April Bruffy. We finally got some information saying that RJ had been helicoptered to Tampa General. And so my neighbor drove me to Tampa General. In the meantime, the Gossiks were right behind us. They were looking for their son, too. Seeing those people standing at the window, trying to get information of where their son was, and knowing that their son wasn't alive was one of the hardest things. And they were just going from hospital to hospital. They just back and forth, trying to get some information, trying to find their son. And meanwhile, a nurse and one of the doctors took me back and told me that RJ was upstairs. They were about ready to take him into surgery, that his leg had been 3/4 severed. They did not know whether they could save his leg or not.
A crowd of 150 paid their last respects at the Hillsborough Memorial Cemetery this morning for Kevin Gossick. A 16-year-old friend say had his life snuffed out before it even got started.
Kevin's someone that could really make you laugh.
An unfortunate and traumatic event is the way everyone describes this bizarre incident. And it's unfortunate this entire scene will be played out again tomorrow when another victim, Robbie Bedell, is laid to rest too.
I didn't think it was any big deal. I didn't think it had affected me as badly as it had. I just kind of thought I could handle it until I came home, which is about a week later. I went to the funeral, Kevin Gossick's funeral, before I went to see my brother. And it hit really hard, all of us. I saw my family for the first time in a month. And when you were so far away from them, it just really was hard to deal with. I just cried my eyes out at the funeral, and I saw all my friends, and seeing Kevin's casket and having to deal with it was really difficult. And then I went to see RJ in the hospital, and it had to be the hardest thing I have ever had to do in my entire life. You don't think that you're as close to your brother as you really are until you see him in a lot of pain.
I can recall vividly the morning that my wife and I heard about Robbie's death. We had just gone on a vacation to the beach about an hour from home here, and it was the first vacation that we had gone on in many, many years, and we had really been excited about going. Robbie had stayed home, and basically because of his job, and he was working at the time for a summer job, and the crash occurred on a late Monday night, and August 1st, 1988, and We didn't find out about it till about 7 o'clock the next morning. Very close friends of ours drove over to the beach and woke us and told my wife about the crash. And needless to say, we were totally devastated. You go through things that you just can't describe. Where Robbie and the thoughts of Robbie and the memories flash back immediately, and then a total numbness of just not knowing what you're doing or what you're thinking or what you're saying.
That Tuesday morning, I guess it would be, one of Robbie's friends called me and told me that there was an accident, and then I had to come quick, and that Robbie was hurt, and I didn't quite understand what was going on, but I ended up at the hospital, and no one knew where Robbie was. And then the police detective pulled me over and told me that Robbie had been killed. And the only thing I could think is, how could this happen? How could this? We were good kids. We had a lot in our life, and I couldn't understand how he could be here one second and gone the next.
Bruce Kimball's problems continued to mount since his arrest in early August. 2 teens died, 4 others injured when Kimball's car plowed into a popular hangout in Valrico. Kimball faced vehicular manslaughter, but apparent evidence that the Olympic diver was drunk prompted new charges.
Our policy is to file charges under the most serious offense that we believe the evidence warrants, and that's why we selected the DUI manslaughter charges.
Specifically, Kimball is charged with 2 counts of second-degree felony DUI manslaughter for the deaths of Robbie Bedell and Kevin Gossick, 3 counts of third-degree felony DUI with personal injury for those hurt in the wreck.
I've dealt with a tremendous amount of adversity in my life. I've experienced enough to know that a person doesn't give up. Not a person here has any understanding of the feelings of grief and remorse that I've experienced in the last 2 weeks. I would like to express my deepest sympathies for the families and friends of the victims of this tragedy.
The state attorney is not confirming Kimball's blood alcohol content level when he crashed into the teens on this spot, but law enforcement officials confirmed with Action News a level of .20, twice the legal limit.
If an individual is killed by the criminal actions of another person, doesn't matter whether that death is called a manslaughter because of a gunshot or whether it's a manslaughter by driving while under the influence of alcohol. It is still a criminal homicide, it is a felony, and it will be prosecuted as such. More and more people, without thinking about it at all, are getting behind the wheels of cars and causing accidents, causing deaths, causing serious bodily injuries of one sort or another. It is a problem which is getting worse. Whether it's going to get worse before it gets better or not, I don't know. But I do know that because of the increasing problem and because of the changing public perception to this problem, that in this day and age, these offenses, these so-called accidents are going to be and are being regarded as the very, very serious felonies, which they are.
16-year-old R.J. Kirker feels lucky to be alive. The teenager's left leg was nearly severed in the accident. His mother says she always fussed at her son for not having his tennis shoes tied, but in this case, it may have saved his life.
It probably would not have a leg, or it would have taken it completely off.
Kirker's left tennis shoe was found in the wheel well of Kimball's car.
I've been in the hospital for a month. I went in there originally, and the first 10 days was fine. Everything, the first 2 operations I had pins in my leg, 4 pins going all the way down. They'd done a flap operation and bone grafts, among other things, to help it heal up and to keep from infection. And I'd gotten out. I had another pin in my foot to keep it from dropping because I don't have any muscle control on my bottom foot for bringing it up. They thought maybe it wouldn't heal right. So they put one in there, and when they took it out, it swelled up, and I had to go in for another 17 days. From there on, it's been trying to get back to what I had before. It's really hard to sit here watch other people run or play sports and knowing that I did it before, I'm not able to now. Before I played soccer and football, and I did all kinds of active sports, swimming, golf, anything that interests me.
RJ has been very brave, through this whole thing. He's handled it very, very well. I wish that people would think before they get behind the wheel of a car after drinking. When we hit someone, we injure them, kill them. It's not just the person that you hit who suffers. It's the family. It's the person who's done the damage. He suffers. His family suffers. Everyone is hurt.
Kimball arrived at the Hillsborough County Court this morning, and there were hordes of photographers and members of the press to greet him. Before he arrived, Circuit Judge Harry Lee Coe, accompanied by court bailiffs and Kimball's attorneys, engaged in some preliminary questioning of jurors. All along, publicity surrounding the trial has been an issue. In court, mothers against drunk driving and friends and family of the victims all sat patiently, waiting for what they call long-awaited justice in a case that's the classic example, they say, of the ills of drunk driving.
When we were initially approached to represent Bruce Kimball, the last thing in Bruce's mind or any of the witnesses that were in the car with him that night was that they were under the influence of alcoholic beverages. We initially thought that there was going to be a very valid defense in that case until we were confronted with the blood alcohol, which was a 2.0, twice the legal blood alcohol. It was real disappointing when we realized that that was going to be the blood alcohol that would be introduced into evidence.
Just after opening arguments, the jury was escorted out of the courtroom. Kimball met with his lawyers for about 25 minutes. He came back with tears in his eyes, talked to his parents, and lawyers told the judge he would plead guilty to DUI manslaughter and DUI causing serious bodily injury. Today, one witness took the stand, the deputy first on the scene of the accident.
The first thing that I saw was a body laying in the road. It was in several pieces.
And she says there was a foot with two more bodies nearby. As the prosecutor prepared to show the jury the picture of a mutilated body, the proceeding came to a halt.
They pled guilty to the 2 counts of DUI manslaughter and 3 counts of DUI with causing serious bodily injury. The state dropped the 2 counts of manslaughter by culpable negligence because, not part of a plea agreement of any sort, but simply because the law in Florida is very clear that you can only be actually convicted and sentenced on 1 count of homicide per 1 death.
The unpleasant details of the bloody ordeal were just too much for Bruce Kimball.
We're satisfied that Mr. Kimball has acknowledged his guilt and made the public statement. And I'm satisfied with that.
After the surprise move in court, Dick Kimball, the Olympic diving coach, Bruce Kimball's father, the man who says he will always stick by his son, made an emotional statement on the courthouse steps.
I'm very proud of him because he did not want to put the families of the kids through a horrible court trial, or our family.
I'm glad it's over. We've been through a lot, and we just want to try to work on our lives now.
We just completed the Bruce Kimball case, where unfortunately a fine young man, an Olympic diver, killed 2 innocent victims and injured 4. The sentence Mr. Kimball received was 17 years in the Florida State Prison. Mr. Kimball had never been accused or convicted of any offense before in his entire life. So you can understand the serious nature of the problem. Most of the people who come before me charged with these types of offenses are not quote-unquote criminals, basically have no prior record. So it's not a question of rehabilitation, it's a question of punishment and deterrence. Obviously, 17 years is a heavy punishment. Whether or not 17 years will be a deterrent to others not to drive while drinking or to drive while under the influence of drugs remains to be seen. While there may be some rehabilitation in this sentence, it will only be, as Louis Wainwright, who headed the Florida prison system for so many years, stated, that once a person has received a sentence and hears that cell door close behind them, basically they're about as rehabilitated as they're ever going to be.
I don't feel hatred or vengeful towards Bruce Kimball at all now. No one in my family feels that way. We all feel that it's over, it's done with, and that if he can get his life back together someday and help other people, that would be fantastic. That would be good.
You just have all these different feelings. You ruined your life, and you ruined others' lives, your family's lives. So many people's lives he has affected. You couldn't even imagine how many people's lives he's affected and changed and destroyed. You just don't know what to think about it.
When you lose one of your children, you lose your future, and the anger and frustration I get, anger is probably the proper word, that my wife and I were feeling when we came to realization that all this had occurred because somebody chose to drink and drink irresponsibly and then drive an automobile and go out and kill our son just as if they had taken a gun and shot him.
I'm Fred Manoucherian, president of the Manoucherian Foundation. Every year, 47,000 people die in automobile accidents. Think about it. As many Americans die each year on our highways as in the 10-year Vietnam War. The aftermath shows some of the injustice, injury, and grief caused by 2 such highway deaths. Over 23,000 of the fatalities each year are caused by drug abuse. Alcohol is a drug, and its abuse is the greatest single cause of this carnage. The Manoucherian Foundation distributes this booklet, Flesh, Metal, and Glass. It deals with all aspects of safety on our highways, and it has a chart showing what it takes to reach illegal and dangerous blood alcohol levels. For a free copy, please write to the Manoucherian Foundation at 475 Park Avenue South, New York, New York, 10016. And remember, alcohol abuse is a grave mistake.
My name is Tim Flynn. For decades, Fred Manoucherian has been involved in reducing deaths and injuries caused by alcohol-related crashes. As a pioneer, he is one of the first to have testified before Congress on this issue, and for his efforts, he is a recipient of many awards, including a Doctorate of Humane Letters from St. John's University. Unfortunately, I didn't know of his effort while I was being bombarded with messages throughout my childhood as to how popular I would be by consuming beer. 12 years ago, one night of drinking a few beers made me a quadriplegic and put me in this wheelchair for the rest of my life. The tape you're about to see is mostly taken from a debate that Fred Manoucherian had at the Javits Center in his efforts to stop the advertising and glorification of alcohol in government-licensed electronic media. I believe in his efforts, and I am now working with the Foundation full-time to do all I can to achieve that goal. I hope you all agree and do what you can to help this cause.
A Guide to the 90s, Chapter 4, Looking Good. In spite of the decade's faster pace, people will still spend hours preparing for a night on the town. Hairstyles will continue to reflect traditional values. Gentlemen will still wear jackets, and the beer you want to be seen with will be New Light Ultra.
Friday night, USA.
Police were not surprised when they learned that alcohol was the cause of this auto accident which killed 3 teenagers. Drinking causes 40 to 50% of teen highway deaths.
The number one cause of deaths among the young in America is auto accidents. It is also the number one disabler of all ages. Half of the fatalities are alcohol related. Every year, 100,000 Americans die as a direct result of alcohol consumption. In 10 years of America's involvement in Vietnam, we lost 50,000 people. In 1 year, alcohol causes 100,000 deaths and costs the American public an estimated $100 billion. All other drugs, including marijuana, crack, cocaine, heroin, etc., cause 6,000 deaths per year. I'm not belittling the severity of the illegal drug problem. I'm just showing by comparison the enormity of the alcohol problem.
I'd like to tell you that Xandra was one of the pretty people, and it wasn't because she was drunk that this happened to her. It was because there was a drunk driver showing off in her parking lot that she happened to park her car in that did this to her. We've had 18 years of pain and misery. This is the first time in 18 years she's been out of pain since last November. She has double vision. She has had 3 brain operations and a stroke. She's had the tracheostomy. She's been in a coma a year. During that time, I didn't know whether she would live or die. I was told that she would die. So I asked the hospital if I could bring her home to die, and they made arrangements for me to do so. It's rather appropriate that everything cracked because that's the way our life has been. We have lived in the pain of having a drunk driver do this to us for 18 years. I have had no peace since that moment. My husband has had no peace. It's a miracle he's been able to work and to keep a job, because we are still upset. This is just like it happened to us yesterday. This isn't something that happened 18 years ago that we could forget. This isn't even a death that maybe your mind would dull a little, because we've had to be there every minute of it. We've had to watch our daughter live through her life without having, she was going to be married when this happened. And she naturally will have no husband and no children to love, or no home of her own for the rest of her life.
College students in this country spend $4.2 billion on alcoholic beverages. They drink 430 million gallons of alcoholic beverages. Junior and senior high school students drink 1.1 billion beers a year. According to the Inspector General, those under 21 consume 35% of all the wine coolers sold in America.
Does one of these children belong to you? And is she one of the 3 million teens who binge drink at least once a month? Surgeon General Antonia Novello says if you want teens to stop drinking, you first have to find out why they do it. And you have to look at everything else that influences impressionable teens.
Novello places a lot of the blame on advertisers. It seems every beer ad these days promises teens they'll look good, they'll feel good, and they'll have a lot of friends if they just drink the right beer.
Novello says beer companies also play a dangerous game by pairing drinking and high-risk sports like boating, sailing, and rollerblading.
The one in where you have always a bikini teen that comes into the beach and never ever happens to them. They don't bleed. Nothing happens to them.
The bottom line is there's a lot of pressure for kids to drink, very little pressure for them to abstain. That, Novello says, is where everything has to change.
I was asking you if you believed kids are affected by the alcohol propaganda that they grow up with all their lives watching TV.
It is my opinion that the cumulative effect of the massive alcohol advertising campaign has not only affected the population, but it has brainwashed us since early childhood, so that at this time we associate drinking with celebrations, sex, romance, unhappiness, happiness, relaxation, and machismo. In short, a cure-all for everything.
The people watching these commercials, most of it are young people who are very impressionable. They haven't had a chance to make up their mind and decide what is right or wrong yet.
Give me a break. Kids get older. Kids ultimately drink. Kids don't start drinking when they're 21 years old in this country. They don't start opening their eyes to advertising in this country suddenly when they become 21 years of age. They don't start developing their relationship to alcoholic beverages when they're 21 years of age.
You know, you have to remember we have big businesses, and I've been on the other end. I've been in commercials. I did a wine commercial years ago, and my hands were shaking so much because I was addicted to alcohol. But I had to put on this face that I was enjoying it, and this was not the truth. I was behind, between the commercial, chugging the wine down because I couldn't keep from, being so nervous about it because of the fact that I was addicted.
I do not, however, believe that the liquor industry should be free to promote and glorify a drug that affects the population much more adversely than all illegal drugs combined. A drug that's not only the cause of 50% of deaths in all auto accidents, but also a drug that's predominantly responsible in deaths through fires, suicides and homicides, rapes, date rapes, assaults, child abuse, and even fetal alcohol syndrome.
Antonia Novello today stepped up her campaign against teenage alcohol abuse. She said almost 700,000 10th graders are binge drinkers. That's an average of 15 drinks a week.
The $2 billion in direct promotions of alcohol each year have brought the society to a point where 30% of all 9-year-olds have peer pressure to drink. And we have 4.5 million teenagers who are either problem drinkers or alcoholics. The psychic numbing that alcohol causes by killing brain cells is now going to play a tremendous part in the epidemic of AIDS. For when we drink, we are much less likely to take the precautions for safe sex, particularly in the case of the young, whose sexual impulses are more predominant.
Alcohol consumption frequently leads to crime, sexual misconduct, personal injuries, higher school dropout rates, and other consequences that hamper the ability of adolescents and children to stay healthy, to stay in school, and to take charge of their future.
A survey of youth serving time for serious crimes. Among those convicted of robbery, 37% had been drinking. Of those convicted of rape, 31% had been drinking. Murder, 27% drinking.
How much influence do you think advertising had on your starting drinking?
Probably a lot. I've been through rehab, through everything. When I first went in, there were 6 friends. 2 of them now are dead, 2 are in jail, and 2 of us are sober, and I'm the only graduating one of all 6 of us. All 5 dropped out. If not 9th grade, 10th, or 11th, none of them made it through their senior year at all. Parents don't say, look, you can't be drinking because, look how it might affect you in your later life. They say, well, as long as they're not doing drugs, as long as they're not doing cocaine, as long as they're not doing rock, it's okay if they drink a little beer on the weekends. It's not.
Pretend your TV is a beer mug.
We're gonna pour you a Miller Lite. Whoops,
Sorry, foam down on your carpet.
Now, tilt the TV towards you.
Can we pour you another?
Hey, I know. Why not buy 6 more TVs and invite some friends over?
The alcohol industry contends that their advertising is geared to switch brands. They and the tobacco industry are the only 2 advertisers making such false claims. In fact, their advertising for the most part is geared to recruit new, young users and to increase consumption regardless of its effect on the public.
If someone's trying to tell me that advertising is not responsible for drinking, then why is it that more African Americans or Latinos are drinking malt liquor instead of Budweiser?
St. Ides malt liquor, sold as the strongest beer on the market, has come under fire for its advertising practices. The New York Attorney General levied a $50,000 fine against St. Ides last week, settling charges that the ads encouraged underage drinking. St. Ides also became the focus of rage by black community leaders who say its ads encourage black teens to drink. Special Assignment's Brian Bodger looks into who is responsible.
Step right up, step right up, step right up, son. An ad campaign targeting black teens.
Get a beer that's better than the rest. The ST.IDE to the F.
Pushing malt liquor to the beat of rap music.
And then to put hair on your chest in the black can. So once you grab a 6-pack and get your girl in the mood quicker. Get your Jimmy thicker with St. Ides malt liquor.
Hair on your chest? Get your girl in the mood quicker? Get your Jimmy thicker? Street language selling sexual promises and the strongest brew on the market to kids.
What they hear is, drink it, I'm cool, drink it, you'll do okay, drink it, you will get the girl. What they don't hear is that drink it and you will have consequences beyond your understanding.
Here, they do understand. This is a New York City drug and alcohol rehabilitation center.
First time they put it on the market, I was drinking it.
Was it easy to get?
Yeah, I mean, come on, 60, 75 cents a can.
But you were only 16 years old.
So you walk in the store and pay for it.
And there's how we'll greet ya. Crash your brew first time we meet ya.
Buy a 40, the ad promises, and get your girl.
So please pass the bottle, cause I've been drinking ever since I could smile. Okay.
Critics say these ads promote more than just St. Ides. They say the ads encourage underage drinking and excessive drinking by black teens, and that the ads romanticize street gangs. It's Friday night, you know what I'm saying? You young, you want to go to a party, you want to get drunk, it does the job. St. Ides does the job. That's why it's popular. You have to be 21 to buy it? No. Only thing you gotta do is have $1.50 and you be all right. $1.50, you good to go.
There is a major inconsistency in the position of our government. If a person is caught with an ounce of marijuana, he is arrested, prosecuted, and incarcerated. On the other hand, our government allows $2 billion annually of promotion and advertising so that the liquor industry can sell some $92 billion per year worth of the drug known as alcohol. Does it make sense for our government to allow the promotion of one drug that costs the society 100,000 deaths and $100 billion each year, while the same government spends billions to stop the distribution of other drugs? The safety organizations are desperately making attempts to stop drinking and driving and trying to safeguard the public in many other ways, from the contribution of alcohol to disasters in our lives.
This man is not only playing Russian roulette with his life, but with your life also.
However, the aggregate amount spent on these efforts is merely a pittance compared to the $2 billion spent annually by the alcohol industry on advertising. It puts us in a position of swimming upstream in a vicious flow that totally drowns us. The only possible way to reduce that flow is to make the advertising of alcohol, which is recognized by the United States government as a drug, illegal on licensed airwaves. If every adult in this country had 2 drinks a day, the alcohol industry would lose 40% of its income. One alcohol advertisement claimed moderate drinking was 4 drinks a day. While problem drinkers and alcoholics constitute 10% of the drinking population, they consume 50% of all alcohol consumed in America. If all the problem drinkers and alcoholics were cured overnight, the alcohol industry would lose half of its sales. It is not to their economic interest that the sick drinker be cured or for the population to drink moderately.
It's stuck. You see? Yeah, every channel. Light beer, light beer.
Again, let me emphasize, I'm not a prohibitionist. I do not suggest abstinence for all. And I am emphatically for freedom of people to do as they wish. My objection is to the promotion of a drug and the inconsistency of the government in allowing such massive promotion of this drug with such high cost in lives and injuries to the public.
When you lose one of your children, you lose your future, and the anger and frustration I get, anger is probably the proper word, that my wife and I were feeling when we came to realization that all this had occurred because somebody chose to drink and drink irresponsibly and then drive an automobile and go out and kill our son just as if they had taken a gun and shot him.
And the police detective pulled me over and told me that Robbie had been killed. And the only thing I could think is, how could this happen? How could this, we were good kids, we had a lot in our life. And I couldn't understand how he could be here one second and gone the next.
I suggest an all-out effort by concerned organizations and citizens to inform our legislators that this inconsistency must stop, not by prohibiting the use of alcohol, but by stopping the glorification and promotion of this drug in all media.
At 19, I stood on top of the world. I was in college, had a girlfriend, was athletic, and liked to party. Everything they tell you to go after in those beer commercials, I chased. They don't mention hospitals or paralysis or wheelchairs in those commercials. And just how are you supposed to know when to say when you're half in the bag? I didn't. It's too bad. Now I'm sitting in this wheelchair, the victim of an impaired driver. Me. You've got to believe that I believe in what Fred Manacharian is proposing. It's time to do something about the brainwashing they're giving us. Please, take action now. Call your senators and representatives in Washington at 202-224-3121. Show them that you know when to say enough.
This man is not only playing Russian roulette with his life, but with your life too.
I love to walk on the beach. I love the sand, water, sun, you. Good wine, driving fast.
Drinking and driving shatters lives.
If you saw a stranger about to break into your neighbor's house, you'd call the police.
Hey, watch out.
If you saw a drunk get behind the wheel of a car, you should also call the police. A drunk driver's like a 2-ton bullet, out of control, aimed at whatever innocent person is in its path.
Mom never forgets to buckle me into my safety seat. What worries me is she forgets to buckle her own seatbelt. She thinks because we're only going to the store, she doesn't need to buckle up.
Oh, here they are.
Doesn't she know most fatal accidents happen close to home? Seatbelts cut the risk of serious injury in half.
Oh, my seatbelt.
The law says I'm supposed to be in the back seat too.